If you're struggling to sell final expense insurance, whether it's over the phone or in person, this video is for you. In fact, even if you've been selling it for a long time, but you're not exactly where you want to be, this video is for you too. My name is Dana Neeson. I'm the Telesales Manager for Tailored Legacy. We run a telesales team across 17 states, and all we sell is final expense insurance for Lincoln Heritage, but this will apply to you no matter where you are, who you sell for, or how many carriers you're with. My ultimate goal is that you will take something from this video, apply it into your sales process, and then come back and tell me what you did and how it worked. Class is in session. Okay, if you made it this far, I can only imagine that you are trying to figure out how to go from where you are now to where you want to be. And that is no different than where your customers are, right? Your customers are in a certain situation and you need to take them from where they're currently at to where they want to be, which is ultimately protecting their family. So if we take the sales process and we break it up into 3 different sections, and if you are working from a script right now, then and even if you're on my team and you're watching this video, I want you to temporarily just don't look at the script, right? Well, you really listen to this video and try to understand conceptually what the script is trying to accomplish, what your script is trying to accomplish. Because if you understand why we're asking questions that we're asking and not just going through the motions and reading them because they're in front of you, that by itself will help you better understand the whole process and make it a better experience for your customer. So even though my script is adapted from the NEPQ sales process, which is Jeremy Miner's company, 7th level, it stands for Neuro Emotional Persuasion Questioning, he has like 7 or 8 different phases that he breaks down the sales process, which if you don't have a lot of experience in sales, I think that sometimes can be a little bit confusing, possibly overwhelming for people. So I like to break it down even more in an even more simplified manner. So we have their first section, which is the getting to know your customer section. Your whole goal is to get to know your customer. And if you don't know anything about them, how can you possibly know how to help them? Okay, so if somebody comes in hot and heavy and just asks you for a price, you have to act confused. You have to say, I'm happy to give you a price, but at this point, I don't even know if what I can offer or what I have can even help you yet. So it might make a little bit more sense if I could ask you a few questions so I can get a better understanding of what you're actually looking for, and to see if what you're looking for aligns with what I do, so that we can see if I can even help you. That has to be your mentality. First things first, you have to go into every conversation really believing that what you do may not actually help the person you're on the phone with. Okay, that's the first thing. Your whole goal has to be to figure out who your customer is and why they're on the phone with you. So a really, really good exercise to start out with, and hopefully most of the people that are watching this are selling some form of life insurance. We want to make a list of why somebody wants to get life insurance. So if we think about a couple of reasons, some of the obvious ones are they want to protect their family. They don't want their family to come out of pocket and pay for funeral expenses, or if you're selling mortgage protection, if something were to happen, they don't want their family to lose the house, right? There's some very obvious things here why our customers want life insurance. What are some of the not so obvious things though? Why would someone want life insurance that maybe not so obvious? Maybe they just had a death in their family and they saw the downstream effect of what happens when someone passes away and there's no money there to take care of anything that needs to be taken care of immediately, and a GoFundMe has to be started. What if they had never really been able to be a provider financially for their family for most of their lives, and this is the only thing that they can get that will leave their family with something? So I want you to start thinking about both the stated needs and the unstated needs of your customers. And your job is to ask questions that get you to understand your customers' obvious needs and non-obvious needs. One of the things that I want to understand about the person that I'm on the phone with before I just start blabbing away about who I am and what I do and asking them health questions in the first 5 minutes, I would want to know things like how long they've been searching for, right? That might be important because it gives me an idea of if they've been putting this off for a long time or if they just recently started. I would want to know if they found anything yet, maybe why haven't they moved forward with that? I would probably want to know if they've ever had life insurance before, right? That'll give me a really good baseline of what direction I'm going to go in to get a better understanding of their situation. I'm going to want to know if they've ever had it maybe with a job before. So that way, when I get to explaining, what term versus whole life is, I can use that information and bring it in. I'm going to want to know what expenses they're looking for this policy to take care of. So oftentimes we get people who want to take care of much larger expenses than what a final expense policy can provide. So you really got to make sure that you have the right expectation for your customer, because you cannot take advantage of the fact that just because you're on the phone with a lead and you sell final expense, that the person you're on the phone with is only looking to take care of final expense. If you box your conversation into that kind of corner and you get to the end and you're only focused on quoting them for funeral costs, you're going to end up finding an objection is that's not enough coverage. I'm going to look for more. And you're going to lose that client because you didn't compartmentalize the different pieces of what they were possibly needing it for. Of course, I also want to know who the money is going to go to, right? The beneficiary is going to be very, very important when generating an emotional connection, making it about their family, making it about their son, making it about their daughter, making it about their grandkids, never saying the word beneficiary, right? Which would be a big, big mistake that completely removes the personalization of the process. If they want it for a funeral, I definitely want to know if they're considering cremation or traditional burial. So when I get to the point where I'm quoting, I can make good recommendations based on what their final wishes are. So once I've uncovered sort of situational foundation of where they have been and what brought them to me on this phone, and the questions I'm asking are very relevant. It's very rare that people question me and say, why are you asking me all these questions? Because the questions are very relevant to the conversation that we're having. And I sound very sincere and curious when I'm asking them. And one question is very naturally leading to the next question. I'm not bouncing around all over the place, asking things that have nothing to do with each other. So once you start at the top, right, you're starting with non-sensitive pieces of information. How long have they been looking? What have they found? Have they ever had it before? What's prevented them from getting it in the past? What expenses does it need to cover? Who are they looking to cover? Like, what type of service do they want to have? I can start asking to get them to be in the habit of answering my questions, right? And start getting them to think that I actually know what I'm talking about because I'm asking them really good questions. So once I have established a little bit of credibility with the types of questions I'm asking, now I can start asking questions that are going to start digging a little bit under the surface to the emotions. I imagine you probably don't want your kids to have to come out of pocket and pay for these expenses if they didn't have to, right? And they'll say, well, yeah, of course. And then I'm going to challenge them with my first challenge question, which is going to be, but why though? Why is that so important to you that your kids don't have to come out of pocket? And that's a very important question. I've said this on multiple videos in the past, because now not only are they going to tell me that they don't want to be a burden, but they're going to tell me why they don't want to be a burden. And you can't just assume that you know why. You can't just assume that that's an obvious question, because their reason could be different from the next customer's reason. And it's also a lot more powerful when they say that reason out loud, because it's going to be more meaningful to them. And it's something that you can use at the end to hold them accountable. My next emotional question is going to get them to start thinking about what might happen if they decide not to do anything at all? What does that look like? Have you thought about, what would happen if you kept shopping around, you found something, that it wasn't as affordable as you thought it was, and you ended up deciding, not to do anything at all? What happens then? This is very important. You have to get them to start questioning their decision-making history. See, what you're battling against is not the competition. You're not battling against me. You're not battling against the next insurance agent that's going to call them. You're battling against your customer's history of not making a decision at all. So helping them start thinking and questioning their way of thinking is going to help move that needle a little bit higher. So when you ask them, have you thought about what would happen if you didn't do something? That's going to challenge them to come up with an answer. And if they don't come up with an answer, you need to say, I know it's really hard, to consider that, but it sounds like from what you've told me, you've been looking for a long time and really haven't put anything in place. So, what does that look like really for your family if you pass away and all those expenses are left to them? Here's an important part. They're either going to realize that they can no longer be in the position to not do something and they have to make a choice, or they're going to tell you what their plan B is. What is a plan B? A plan B could be, well, my family will all have to come together and pay for it like they always have. A plan B could be, well, I might just go down to the local funeral home and look at a payment plan with them. A plan B might be any of a number of things. It might be they're just going to use the money they have in their savings account for their kids to pay for everything. Doesn't matter what it is, no matter what they say their plan B is, you have to challenge them. You have to say, but that makes sense, but do you really want your family to have to come together and pay for it out of their own pocket? Is that what you really want? Do you really want to go down to the local funeral home and make a payment plan? Because you could start making payments and then pass away before you finish paying it. And then what happens then? Do you really want ... fill in the blanks of what they said and have them start questioning what their plan B will be? Because if you don't do that, that's going to come back and bite you at the end when you get to your objections. Well, that sounds really good, but I think I'm just going to do this. Finally, once you know everything about your customer, why they're on the phone, their history of insurance in the past, what they think they know, what they need the insurance money to cover, whether they want burial or cremation, who the insurance money is going for, why they don't want them to have to come out of pocket, what will happen if they don't do anything at all, and really get them to picture it, you're going to throw it, you're going to summarize it, you're going to wrap it in a bow, and you're going to recap it to them. That is very important part of the sales process in the beginning. It shows your customer that you were actually listening. I'm going to make up a recap just of a fake customer, and this will hopefully serve as a template for you to use moving forward. All right, Ms. Jones, let me see if I understand. So you've never really had insurance before in the past, only through a job, and you've been retired though for 5 years or so now. So you really haven't had any protection for yourself in the last 5 years. You've started looking at it more serious though in the past few months because there was a recent death in the family, and that started getting you to think about your mortality and what would happen to your family when you pass. Everything online that you're looking at and everyone that you talk to is just continuing to confuse you even more. So that's probably having you feel like you just don't want to do anything because you don't understand it. You just want the policy to pay your family right away and take care of your funeral costs and final expenses, and possibly leave some extra money for your family as well. And if you can accomplish all of that at an affordable cost to you, that will provide you the peace of mind you're looking for, so you don't have to worry about this again. Ms. Jones, does it sound like I got all that right? And if you do it the right way, Ms. Jones will respond back to you and say, yes, that is exactly right. So then and only then can you move on to the second part of your conversation. The second part of your conversation is your presentation, but Your presentation is not telling. You cannot just sit there and talk to your customer about features and benefits, right? That will go over their head. If you talk too much in insurance speak, they won't understand you. You need to make it a conversation, a back and forth conversation that your customer is actively participating in because you're asking them questions and checking in with them along the way. First thing that I do is provide some education. I always want to know if my clients have ever been explained the difference between term insurance and whole life insurance. And if they say they know the difference, I don't just take that at face value and move on. Why don't I do that? Because chances are they might just tell me that term is temporary and only lasts for a certain amount of time and whole life is permanent and move on. But think about it for a second. What really important thing are they missing if that's their definition of insurance? They're missing the fact that all the advertisements that get throwing in their face day in and day out are policies that show $20,000 of coverage for $9.95 a month or $150,000 of coverage for pennies a day. And that is what you have to overcome. You're not overcoming temporary versus permanent. You're overcoming the ads that they see. And there is no way for them to know or understand that the ads that they see day in and day out are advertising term. Then you're going to explain what those advertisements are and how it's term so that they don't get to the end of your quote, here $10,000 for $85 and think, well, I can get $20,000 for $9.95 because they don't understand that those policies are term. Explaining the difference between the two and checking in with them throughout the way is very important before you move on. You have to get them to say, yes, I understand that those policies are not what I'm looking for. Yes, I understand that I'm probably not going to get that much coverage for the money that they're advertising. When you explain whole life, you have to check in with them as well and say, now, before I move on, do you have any questions about what I just explained to you? Or do we need to brush up on any of that first? You need your customers to be a bit of an expert, and you also need to explain it on a layman's level. You have to talk to people on a third grade level, not because I'm trying to insult anybody, but because statistically, that's how people understand things the best. So you don't want to actually use words like term. You don't want to use words like premium. You don't want to use words like ratings and risk, right? Those are all terms that are up here. You want to use terms that are a little bit lower down here. So we want to say payment. We want to say temporary. We want to say permanent. We want to say, a lot of health conditions or not a lot of health conditions. We want to talk to them at a level that you would probably try to explain this to your children. That's going to make them feel like they really understand what you're saying. Think about what it was like when you learned all this stuff for the first time. And now you're just supposed to regurgitate it and explain it to your 75-year-old client. So if you've done a really good job at helping your customer understand the difference, and they've told you that they're only interested in a permanent policy, you have now positioned yourself as the expert because you have taken the time to take your customer down the path that a lot of insurance agents won't do. They've already asked health questions and are already trying to pre-qualify them. Now, the next part of the presentation is very, very important. This is where we start to build the emotion, the emotional aspect of the sale. So we've started with a little logic. Now we're going to move on to the emotion side. And we're going to do this in a way where we introduce problems that our customers didn't realize that they had. We're going to make them feel like it's a really big problem. And then we're going to come in as the hero and we're going to solve it. If you're a Lincoln Heritage agent, this part of the presentation will be only relevant to you. However, if you sell or if you're contracted through AMAM, I know they have some pre-need funeral stuff that they offer, as well as if you're with Senior Life, they have the legacy assurance. So this is also relevant to other people outside of Lincoln. But what I'm about to share is very specific to Lincoln. So you're going to have to tailor it based on what you sell and who you sell for. Once I'm done wrapping up education, I transition in a way that says, okay, so I've explained to you the difference between term and whole life. We've identified that you understand it and that you want to move forward with a permanent policy. Now you can get that anywhere, right? A lot of companies sell whole life insurance for final expenses. What I want to explain to you is why a lot of people choose us. Now, the first problem is that when someone passes away, most life insurance companies typically take 4 to 6 weeks to pay out. And by law, they can actually take up to 3 months or 6 months. I apologize. And then I'll ask my client, did you know that? They'll say, no, I didn't. Okay, so I'm really glad we're talking about this, because it's one thing to just buy a life insurance policy so you have that peace of mind that they're going to get the money. But it's another thing when you think about what's actually going to happen to this policy when I pass and how long it's going to take for my family to get it. Lincoln Heritage works with a nonprofit organization called the Funeral Consumer Guardian Society. It's actually founded by an ex-funeral director. And his whole goal is to make sure that when someone passes away, when one of our policyholders passes away, that their family gets an immediate payout within 24 to 48 hours. So your family doesn't have to come out of pocket and worry about how in the heck are they going to pay for these funeral arrangements, because they're not going to get paid for a month or two. So I've introduced a problem. I've told them how I'm going to solve it. And now I'm going to wrap it up by saying, the whole reason you're buying this life insurance policy is to protect your family, right? But think about it. Where would that actually leave them if it takes 4 to 6 weeks to get paid? And then you shut up. You let them answer the question. Where would that actually leave your family if it took 4 to 6 weeks to get paid? So now they're going to have their first realization, like, oh my God, I never thought about that before. I'm going to give them a little bit more education. I'm going to say now the Funeral Consumer Guardian Society was founded by an ex-funeral director named Joe Kraft. And I'm going to explain how his father was a funeral director, his grandfather was a funeral director, and this goes back generations all the way to the 1800s. And really the reason he started this nonprofit was to be an advocate for grieving families, because he saw firsthand how corrupt and greedy the funeral industry had become. In fact, when his family business sold to a big corporation, he saw firsthand all the prices started going way up. And why did that happen? Okay, so I'm going to give my customers a little bit of education. I'm going to ask them, have you ever had to plan or pay for a funeral before? And I'm going to start painting the picture of what it actually looks like for their family the first time they step foot into a funeral home. And I'm going to paint the picture that that funeral director is going to offer their condolences, of course, but they are going to ask, how do you plan on paying? And did your loved one have insurance? Now, why do you think these funeral directors want to know if you had a life insurance policy? And usually they'll say, well, they want to make sure they get paid. Yes, but also because they know how long it takes for insurance companies to pay out, and they want to know how much they can spend. I'm going to paint the picture that that funeral director is going to offer their condolences, of course, but they are going to ask, how do you plan on paying? And did your loved one have insurance? Now, why do you think these funeral directors want to know if you had a life insurance policy? And usually they'll say, well, they want to make sure they get paid. Yes, but also because they know how long it takes for insurance companies to pay out, and they want to know how much they can spend. So in many cases, they will try to get you to assign, they will try to get your family to assign that policy over to them. And of course, they make it sound like a really good idea, because now your family doesn't have to come out of pocket. The funeral home will absorb the costs up front. They'll wait to get reimbursed. But what do you think happens to the cost of your funeral once that policy is now in their control? That's right. It goes way up. In fact, if you have a $20,000 policy, I can almost bet that your funeral will cost $20,000. So we're going to have this back and forth conversation for a while. We're going to talk about this. We're going to sit here and I'm going to make them picture what it looks like when their family walks into the showroom where they have all the caskets and how they on purpose have this beautiful lighting that's, you know, shining down on the most expensive caskets that they know your family won't buy, because it's going to lead them to the section that they do want them to buy, which is a very expensive casket still. They want you to buy the things that they know you don't need because it lines their pockets even more. And I'm going to explain to them that the Guardian Society will take over this entire process for their family. They're going to contact the funeral home. They're going to let them know that you had a life insurance policy, but they will not tell them how much it's for. And they do that on purpose so they can make sure that your family is being charged for what they need, that your family isn't getting things that are too excessive. And if they have to, they can even buy the caskets and have them shipped to your funeral home with next day air for less than what it costs you to buy it there. Having this part of the conversation is an important part of the emotional impact that you are going to have on them, and which will ultimately make them want to move forward with you. And after I've gone through that, which can sometimes take 10 minutes by itself, I'm going to check in, right? We're having this natural conversation, but I'm going to check in with them and I'm going to say, so do you see how it's so much more than just buying a life insurance policy? Like, do you like what we're offering and how we can be there to protect your family? Why do you like it? How do you think this will help your family, right? I'm checking in with them and I'm making them come up with their own answers, which will ultimately solidify them selling themselves. Let's pretend it's 20, 30 years from now, right? And you're in the hospital with your family and maybe things aren't looking so good. You know, the nurse might walk in at 2 a.m, tap your son on the shoulder and let him know that you've just passed. She's going to offer her condolences, of course, but the very next thing she's going to say is that your kids need to make arrangements for your body because they have to get the room ready for the next patient. I mean, the loss that they will feel at that moment will be so insurmountable that the idea of having to figure out who to call and where to go and who knows what they're going to say on the other end of the line when that funeral director picks up the phone. Or they can just pull out their ID card. They can make one phone call to us and we will be there to take over and take care of everything for them. And what do I mean by everything? This even includes transportation. This includes from the moment you get on the phone with the funeral director, that transaction process begins. And the fact that your family won't have to make decisions when they're not in the right state of mind is everything. And that is why we've been the leader in this insurance for the last 60 years. Now, and only now, will I move on to the health questions. I might even say, you know, what do you like about what we've had to say the most? I mean, do you like that we only offer permanent protection that will never go up in price or cancel at any age? Do you like that we'll be offering your family immediate payout so they don't have to come out of pocket or assign your policy over to the funeral home? Or do you like that the Guardian Society will be there as your family's advocate to make sure they're not overcharged or taken advantage of when it comes to paying for your final expenses? Obviously, you guys, there's no wrong answer here. And oftentimes the customers tell us, I like all of it. This sounds amazing. So once you're moving on to the health questions, they're already sold, right? A lot of times I get asked, well, what do you do after you give pricing? Like, how do you overcome objections? And all of this, we're stuck at the end, which now we're transitioning to the third part of our presentation, which is asking the health questions, figuring out what they qualify for, whether it's the final expense program with immediate coverage or whether they have to be modified with a waiting period, talking about our terminal illness benefit, if it's relevant, and then also talking about the additional benefits of the accidental death coverage. A lot of people don't realize that Lincoln Heritage can offer up to $160,000 of accidental death coverage because they have it in units. It's not just double indemnity. So we have a full encompassing accidental death program for dollars extra that provides tremendous more monetary value than just the face value of the policy. The third part is giving them recommendations that are relevant to their situation and will take care of at least the majority of what their final expenses are. But you have to be sensitive to the fact that people are most of the time living on a fixed income. So if somebody is modified, right, they have a significant health condition, they have cancer, maybe COPD, they have kidney disease, they have heart disease, they have congestive heart failure, circulatory issues, something that causes them to not just have a 2-year waiting period, but also it's going to be more expensive. Okay, so you have to start getting them in a type of mindset where they're going to be okay with easing the burden for their family and it not just being all or nothing. So if I know they're modified, before I give you the quotes, I just want to have a quick little chat, because there are some health conditions here. You're not as young as you once were. And, when I make recommendations to you, I want you to know that I'm being very thoughtful of your situation and also what you might be able to afford. So what I really want to know and understand is, are you open to just easing the burden for your family, or is it all or nothing? And pretty much 10 times out of 10, they're going to tell me, I'm open to easing the burden. And I'll say, because if you really had your heart set on 20,000, but you can only afford 10 or 15, like that is okay. It's more than okay, because it's 10 or 15,000 more than where you're at right now. And it's a heck of a head start compared to what else they might have to come up with out of pocket if they're short. And remember, the Guardian Society is going to be there for them as their advocate to make sure that if they can save anything from that policy, their whole goal is to keep it with them. Does that make sense? Yes. Okay, perfect. So now I'm going to give you some options. I typically present them with 3 different options. If it's cremation and they're older or they're modified, I may choose 3,000, 4,000, 5,000. If they're in good health, I may do 5,000, 8,000, 10,000. If it's traditional burial and someone is modified or they're a lot older, I may actually start at 5 just because I want to be conscious of the price. So wherever I start, it's always in the best interest of the customer for what they're looking for and what they can possibly afford. And I never, ever, ever ask people what their budget is. I never ask them what they can afford. That would be the biggest mistake you could possibly make, because they are looking to you at what they should get. And if they see the value in what you're offering, they will justify the price. They will make it work. But you asking them what they can afford or what their budget is, that is a very salesy question, and it's going to immediately put up sales resistance. Now, if you've done a good enough job in the first part and the second part and wrapping it up at the end, you should get very little to no objections. The most common objections, if you've done everything right, will be, I need a little bit more time. And typically that's just a concern because they think they might have to pay something today. And you just very calmly say, oh, that's not a problem. How much time do you need? Very casual, right? Well, I don't get paid until the 3rd. Oh, perfect. Because we don't need any money from you today. We're just applying to make sure that you're approved. We won't start your first payment till the 3rd. And then you just move in and start writing your application. So those are pretty like the common concerns just about the logistics of when the first payment is going to start. You may have some budget concerns where they're going to want to go make sure that they can afford it. And in that case, you're going to have to loop them back in with the budget objection. Now, the budget objection I like to use is, well, of course, but money aside, is this program, is this solution something that you want to have? And of course, it's designed for them to say yes. And you would say, okay, well, that makes sense. I mean, why do you think it would help you though? And you're going to make them tell you again why it will help them and their family. And once they do, you have two ways you can go here. You can immediately go into, can I make a suggestion, and offer a lower one to start. And if they decide they have more room in their budget, they can always increase. Or you can do the takeaway, right? Once they tell you why they want it, you also kind of got to figure out why they want it now. Okay, well, that makes sense. But I mean, why now? You've already not had it for 5 years. I mean, why not just put it off for another year or two, like a lot of people would. And then, hopefully something doesn't happen to you, but if something does, now your family doesn't have that protection that you said you wanted for them. I mean, what happens then? So if you do that in the right way, not only will you have just had your customer tell you why they want it, they're also going to tell you why they want it now and why they shouldn't continue to put it off. Then you can come in with saying things like, can I maybe make a suggestion? They have to say yes. It seems to me that, money not being an issue, that this is something you would want to have, and then you repeat back what they said, right? Okay, so my recommendation would be to possibly start at the lower end of these options so we can at least make sure you're approved. And then, we won't start anything until the 3rd. But if you decide that there is extra room in your budget, then you can just call me back and we'll add on some more. Would that be maybe a reasonable solution? Okay, so if you skip the part where you are helping them identify why they like it and why they like it now, and you just go right into, we just need to make sure it's approved, you're immediately going to put up walls, you're going to have sales resistance, and you're going to lose the sale. Or you're going to pressure them so much to do the application and they're going to cancel. So the whole goal is to help people feel comfortable and confident in doing the application with you and making a decision to keep it, not to just submit the application and hope and pray that it sticks. Now, on the flip side, if you get to the end and you're giving quotes and prices and you're getting a lot of objections, then you miss steps in the first part and the second part. You have holes that are still open because of the questions you didn't ask, or the questions that you did ask, they were the wrong ones. So at the end, if you have a lot of objections and you're getting a lot of the same ones, it's because you haven't moved that emotional needle high enough to get them invested enough in making that decision now. I really hope that breaking down the sales process today helps you, right? The first part, again, we identify their situation, what got them to us in the first place, and what's motivating them to put something in place. The second part is education and creating or identifying problems they didn't know they had and getting you to solve those problems, getting them emotionally invested in you. And the third part would be asking the health questions, figuring out what they qualify for, explaining it to them in a way they understand, very simple, very easy, and making good recommendations, managing expectations, making them feel like they are comfortable and safe with you. And that is how you will be successful in selling final expense.